You call that a punch? My grandmother hits harder, and she's from Earth. Merrick's taunt reverberated through the damp corridors of the galactic maximum security prison known as the Pit. To its inhabitants, the Pit was an infamous institution housing the most dangerous criminals from across the galaxy. Survival here hinged on wit, strength, and the ability to maneuver through the complex social hierarchies of various alien species. Unfortunately for Merrick, he was the first human ever incarcerated in this hellhole, a fact that drew both fascination and scorn from the other inmates. The Pit was a labyrinth of steel and stone, with cells stacked precariously atop one another, each more claustrophobic than the last. The air was saturated with a blend of alien pheromones, sweat, and the metallic tang of blood. Merrick had been thrown into this grim place following a botched diplomatic mission that resulted in the death of a high-ranking alien official. Although the death wasn't his fault, the Galactic Council needed a scapegoat and a human made for a convenient choice. Merrick leaned against the cold, unyielding wall of his cell, arms crossed. His cellmate, a hulking reptilian named Zirak, regarded him with a mix of curiosity and disdain. Zirak's dark green scales shimmered under the dim light, looking almost black in the shadows. Having spent nearly a decade in the Pit for a crime so heinous, even the other inmates avoided him. Zirak's presence was both formidable and isolating. "You got a death wish, human," Zirak hissed, his forked tongue flickering as he spoke. "The gangs here will tear you apart if you keep provoking them." Merrick shrugged, a defiant smile tugging at his lips. "Let them try. I've faced worse back on Earth." Zirak snorted, a sound more like a rumble of thunder than amusement. "You're a fool. This isn't Earth. Down here, you're at the bottom of the food chain." As if on cue, a group of aliens appeared at the entrance to Merrick's cell. Their varied forms were united by one common trait, a look of malevolent intent. Leading them was Krell, a massive blue-skinned Zorian, known for his brutality. Krell's eyes narrowed as he saw Merrick, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Well, if it isn't the human," Krell sneered, contempt dripping from his voice. "I hear you're quite the comedian. Let's see if you're still laughing after a little chat." The gang filed into the cell, surrounding Merrick and Zirak. Zirak remained seated on his bunk, shifting his gaze between Merrick and Krell. The air crackled with the tension of a storm about to break. "Is this about the food?" Merrick asked casually, almost bored. "Because if it is, I already told you, I don't know what you guys eat. That slop they serve in the cafeteria? Not my doing." Krell's smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure malice. "This isn't about the food, human. It's about respect. You come in here thinking you're better than us. Talking back. We don't like that." Merrick chuckled, shaking his head. "You want respect? Earn it." Krell's eyes flashed with rage, and he lunged at Merrick, his four fists a blur of motion. Merrick ducked and weaved, his movements fluid and precise from his extensive combat training, a necessity for his work in the far reaches of the galaxy. But here, it was about survival. The first punch glanced off Merrick's shoulder, sending a jolt of pain down his arm. He twisted, using the momentum to drive his elbow into Krell's midsection. The Zorian grunted, but remained unyielding. His gang closed in, fists and claws flying. Merrick fought back with all he had, a flurry of strikes and counters that left several attackers groaning on the ground. But there were too many of them. A sharp blow to the back of his head sent Merrick sprawling, his vision swimming. A heavy boot connected with his ribs, driving the breath from his lungs. Through the haze of pain, he saw Krell standing over him, a triumphant grin on his face. "Looks like the human isn't so tough after all," Krell taunted, his voice echoing in Merrick's ears. Merrick tried to rise, but another kick to his side sent him back down. His strength was waning, the edges of consciousness blurring, but he refused to give up. Not here, not like this. Summoning the last of his strength, Merrick pushed himself up onto his hands and knees. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye, staining the floor beneath him. He looked up at Krell with a defiant spark in his eyes. "This isn't over," Merrick growled, his voice low and fierce. "Not by a long shot." Krell's smile faltered, uncertainty flickering across his face. Before he could react, Merrick surged to his feet, driving his shoulder into the Zorian's chest. The impact sent both of them crashing into the cell wall, and Merrick followed up with a rapid series of punches that left Krell reeling. The other gang members hesitated, unsure of what to do. Their leader was down, and the human was still standing. Merrick's eyes blazed with fiery determination, and for a moment the gang saw something they hadn't expected. Fear. Standing over Krell, Merrick breathed hard, his body bruised and battered but unbroken. "You wanted respect," he said, his voice a harsh whisper. "You got it." With that, he turned and walked back to his bunk, every step a testament to his indomitable will. The gang members exchanged uncertain glances and slowly backed away, leaving Merrick and Zorian alone in the cell. Zorian watched Merrick with newfound respect, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You're either the bravest human I've ever met," he said slowly, "or the craziest." Merrick collapsed onto his bunk, wincing as his injuries protested. "Maybe a little of both," he replied, a weary smile tugging at his lips. As the adrenaline faded, he knew this was just the beginning. The pit was brutal, and he had made powerful enemies, but he had also made an impression. In a place like this, sometimes that was enough to survive. Merrick's fight with Krell sent ripples throughout the pit. Whispers of the human who stood up to the infamous Zorian gang leader spread like wildfire. For the first time since his arrival, Merrick felt a shift in how the other inmates looked at him. There was still hostility, but it was now laced with cautious respect. In the days that followed, Merrick focused on recovering from his injuries and learning as much as he could about the various gangs controlling the pit. Zorian, who had initially been dismissive, began sharing valuable information about the prison's power dynamics. "The Zorians are dangerous," Zorian explained one evening, his voice low. "But they're not the only threat. There are the Cathari, a hive-minded clan of insectoids. They're ruthless and efficient, but don't get involved in petty squabbles. Then there are the Moloch, who rely on brute force. You don't want to get on their bad side." Merrick nodded, absorbing the information. "What about allies? Anyone I can trust?" Zorian snorted. "Trust in here? You're dreaming. But there are a few who might see you as useful rather than a threat. The Silari, for instance. They're a mercantile race always looking for an edge. And then there's Zen, a solitary bacterian. He's been here longer than anyone, and knows the ins and outs of this place better than the guards." Merrick made a mental note to seek out Zen. Information was power, and he needed all the power he could get. The opportunity to speak with Zen came sooner than expected. During one of the rare moments when the guards allowed inmates to mingle in the common area, Merrick spotted the bacterian sitting alone at a table, his 4 eyes scanning the room with weary vigilance. Zen was a lanky, silver-skinned alien with a wiry build, marked by scars from countless battles. Merrick approached cautiously, aware that any sudden movement could be seen as a threat. "Mind if I sit?" he asked, nodding toward the empty seat across from Zen. The bacterian glanced up, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Suit yourself, human," he replied, his voice a raspy whisper. Merrick sat down, leaning in slightly. "I hear you're the one to talk to if I want to survive in here." Zen's lips curled into a wry smile. "Survival is tricky. It depends on a lot of factors." "What do you want, human?" "Information," Merrick said plainly, "and maybe some advice." Zen leaned back, studying Merrick critically. "Information and advice don't come cheap. But I saw what you did to Krell. That was impressive. Stupid, but impressive." "I had to make a stand," Merrick replied. "Otherwise, I'd have been dead already." Zen nodded slowly. "True enough. All right, I'll give you some advice for free. This place is a cesspool of violence and treachery, but it's also a system. Every gang, every inmate has their place. Disrupt the balance too much, and you'll have the entire pit coming down on you.